And here we go. It is a live chat here on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms. Hi, I'm Dan Kingerski. So let's get into this. I literally just ran into the studio. Haven't even had time to look at how I look. Jason Spezza was doing the press conference thing today instead of Mike Sullivan or one of the assistant coaches. We talked to Mike Vellucci on Tuesday. Jason Spezza did it on Wednesday. And Spetz was a bit late. So we're in the locker room waiting. Like, come on, man. He was on a call. I literally raced out of practice. We don't have a practice story up on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. I feel terrible. But here we are. We're doing the live chat. I thank you all for joining us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk. This is just going to be a free-for-all today. We're talking trade market. We'll also get into the Sidney Crosby stuff. I feel like maybe you want to sound off on that. But in addition to your trade proposals, we'll go there. I want to touch on Anaheim as well. Andrew Knoll, who I know from a past life at the Orange County Register, kind of wrote a story. I disagreed with some of his conclusions. Let me make sure I sound good. Okay, check. Yep. So we're going to get into what Anaheim might be thinking coming up at the trade deadline. Also, some of what Jason Spezza had to say about the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Penguins. I'll share some of that with you as well. I actually put the question straight to Spezza. Hey, what about Ponomarev's development? And are you concerned about the recent penalties? Now, for those of you who just checked me out on YouTube, you haven't seen or been reading Pittsburgh Hockey Now, where I spent a good chunk of last week chasing around the Wilkes-Barre Penguins. And Ponomarev, in 2 of 3 games, was given a game misconduct for really dumb penalties. A boarding penalty and then a sucker punch gets the 5 minutes and the heave-ho in both cases. I suppose I'll let the cat out of the bag now. And then Spezza kind of said, well, we'd rather him make those mistakes down there as he's trying to learn where the line is. Okay, fair enough. I'm going to make a note here just to come back to Ponomarev. My writing pretty much stands. If you didn't read the Pittsburgh Hockey Now full analysis on Sunday and Saturday of Rutger McGroarty, please check that out. Before we get going as well, I know a lot of you, sometimes you own a small business or you have you're part of your company's advertising decisions. We'd like a sponsor for the No Pucks Given podcast for these live chats. Altogether, we do, 2,000 to 3,000 viewers on the YouTube and the podcast per week. So if you're out there and you want to sponsor us, especially for a local company, we'll make it worth your while. And I also noticed, as Spezza was speaking, before we get to all your trade proposals, just fire away, right? I kind of felt like, wow, we are really ahead of the game. Nobody else took the off-week opportunity to go cover Wilkes-Barre-Scranton. Nobody else really had sort of the fundamental working knowledge of the team quite like I did. And I hope you appreciate that, because it's not always easy doing the crazy stuff that I do, driving around storms and staying in $50 motels, which I did in Hershey. It was actually clean. The owner was kind of a weirdo. I could hear him in the hallway just talking about weird stuff. And I was like, we're getting out of here now. See you later. But that's... And I hope that I have condensed everything that I've seen and been able to deliver it to you, maybe not in the easiest digestible form, but at least in somewhat of a digestible form where you feel like you know a lot more about the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Penguins than you're going to get anywhere else. I hope we have delivered that. I hope all of the work was beneficial to you. Based on these subscriptions we got over the weekend, I think a lot of people agreed. But if there's something you want to talk about, something you want to see, or any way that we can tailor our coverage to you, the bosses, let me know. That is the big fundamental difference from Pittsburgh Hockey Now to the legacy media around the country. Is I feel like I understand that the old definition of news, journalism 101, first day, journalism school, any communications class, they tell you the definition of news is whatever we say it is. So if the news people feel like this is important, you should know this from this angle. That's what news was. Now, with citizen journalism, which I think Elon Musk didn't coin the term, but I think he's riding it better than anybody else has. News is entirely different. News is what you want to know, not what we want you to know. I think Pittsburgh Hockey Now understands that maybe better than anybody else. So your input, like these little shows, are always quite valuable. All right, let me straighten up here. I literally sat down and hit play or hit live. Okay, starting at the top of the questions here. Here we go. Nick Brozer. Sounds like if Super Mario had to battle a frat boy, your princess is in another castle, bro. Yeah, that's not my favorite nickname, but it's also, I kind of think of like a bulldozer. He is kind of short and getting a little bit squatty in a good way. So, will Tanner Howe be in Wilkes next year? In all likelihood, yes. He's eligible. Harrison Brunick, for whatever reason, is not. Well, I know the reason is his birthday is a couple months shy of the deadline. That to me seems stupid. If you can be selected in the 2024 NHL draft, you should be eligible for the AHL in 2026, like Tanner Howe is. The Canadians are obsessed. The Canadian hockey establishment is obsessed with maintaining as much talent in the Canadian junior leagues as possible, to the detriment sometimes of the top-end players. Full stop. I make no apologies for what I just said. And I know, but if you take out the top-end talent, then the bottom-end talent doesn't have, like, the leaders, and they don't have what to measure. I didn't say let kids go pro at 16, but at 19, you should be allowed. And that's all I got to say about that. And if a guy is born in January, he can't go. But if a guy's born, or I guess if a guy's born in November, he can go. In January, you can't. That's just nonsense. But yes, I believe Tanner Howe will be in Wilkes-Barre next year. The alternative would be sending him back to juniors as an overager. Probably not the best for him. Michael, how are you today? I'm doing just peachy. Do I think the Penguins should play their D-men more like the Canes? Very aggressive on the wall, could bring out the best in EK, 65, and Pierre-Olivier Joseph. You're talking about a significant structural change there, Michael. The Hurricanes are kind of built for that 6 deep. The Penguins are not any longer. If Erik Karlsson had joined a 32-year-old Chris Letang and, P.O. Joseph at 26, where he is now, had joined that crop, and I think you'd have a much easier time. I don't think Chris Letang can do the pinches and get back like he used to. I think he has suffered that step loss this year. So no, in reality, Erik Karlsson and somewhat P.O. Joseph could play like that. But also don't forget, the Penguins defense does pinch. It's not quite the whirling dervish of the Carolina Hurricanes, where it's a 5-stick rotation in the offensive zone. It really is akin, in Carolina anyway, to this new trend at the lower levels of hockey, like youth hockey, of this positionless hockey. Carolina probably takes that as far as any other NHL team does, although the Penguins are trending that way as well. I mean, do you really want to see Ryan Graves and Vinny Desharnais playing in the, on the half wall? And let's just say Philip Tomasino cycling to the top? You could get you can get in trouble. I know some people want to say Mike Sullivan should maximize the Erik Karlsson that you're seeing in the Four Nations. But don't forget, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And I think if Sullivan hasn't put reins on Erik Karlsson, but if he encouraged too much, like just go play your game, to hell with defense, I think you'd see a structural breakdown, like a meteor hit the earth. And by the way, what the hell's up with NASA? Upping the odds that a comet hits the earth in 2032. That's like 3 times in 3 weeks. They've now upped the odds. They upped it yesterday to 3.1%. Whew. Anyway, Jake Bacon comes back to us. What's up, Dan? What do you think Matt Grizzly could fetch at the deadline? A second? Yeah, I think I'm kind of on record. I think a second, and maybe if the market heats up for him, if a couple of or several teams jump into the mix, you might get a middling prospect or like a 4th or 5th round pick, like a 2 and a 4, a 2 and a 5. I certainly think he's worth at least a 2 all day long. Do I think it's likely that Fernstrom will play in the SHL again before coming over to the AHL the following year? Who the hell are you talking? I have no idea who Fernstrom is. Straight up, I don't know. I'm going to Google Fernstrom. Who are you talking about? Melvin Fernstrom. He was included. Okay, he was in the deal with Vancouver. Listen, full stop. I know nothing about the guy. Absolutely nothing about them. My general rule of thumb is until I see them in training camp, a rookie development practice, I don't know anything about them. And so we'll see. I mean, he kind of felt like a throw-in in that deal. I mean, they got a first rounder for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. And it wasn't like Fernstrom was, a top prospect. In fact, let me double check here. What was he? Yeah, his NHL, he's probably like a 2 of 10 to make it to the NHL. None of these scouting reports. Now this is all coming back to me as I kind of analyze this in the moment. None of his scouting reports were very good. He was kind of one of those draft picks you take knowing he has some talent, and if there's like a spark to the kindling, something could take off. What for round was he selected? 3rd round, back of the 3rd round at that. Don't get too in love with him, I guess would be my point. If he comes over next year, you would think he'd come over for the rookie camps. Then we can talk about what he looks like within the context of North American hockey. Just have all of us sponsor me. Instead of putting YouTube videos behind a paywall, get a Patreon account. You can find creative, fun ways to thank us. I've thought about making this sort of a subscriber only on YouTube where you have to kick in $1 or $2 every month to watch it. I've thought about it. Ultimately, I worry that like 10 people would subscribe and I'd be doing a show for 10 or 15 people. I love you 10 or 15, but I think I'd much rather do a show for 1,000 people. All right, Flux says this is not a question. The last episode of No Pucks Given was excellent. Thank you. I felt like for whatever reason, I just sat down and the show was scripted in front of me without me writing it. I really felt like, my mind had prepared. My mind was clean when I sat down. It wasn't thinking about 10 other business things. and I wasn't rushed. I just sat down, knocked it out, and I knew exactly where I was going with it. I got Flux amped with my comments on Rutger McGroarty, ready to run through a wall. Well, maybe not just yet. I would suspect you're going to see Rutger for a couple of weeks before the end of the regular season. That's my guess. Of course, if the Penguins don't trade anybody, I don't know. I suspect there will be trades, though, and there will be a spot open. And McGroarty is probably the first up. Having said that, you want to attach your immediate hopes to somebody and really get behind a prospect? Emil Bemstrom, baby. I had a conversation with him on Tuesday. I wandered over. I don't think I've ever wandered over to talk with Emil Bemstrom. So and this part made me laugh. He was serious and then laughed after it. And it took me a second to process the situation and why he found it funny. Because he is playing a different game this year. He knows how to score at the AHL level. His numbers have always been way up here. Very good in the AHL. He's achieving those results in a different way this year, a much more NHL quality sort of offense. What I mean by that is he's getting good shots between the dots. He had a lot of goals last year. I'm not going to lie. Where an NHL goalie would have gobbled them up easily. But in the AHL, a lot of nights you get teams that have their bus legs. They're not really motivated, enthusiastic. They're like, they hop off the bus. They have Chipotle before the game. They're scraping down whatever carbs and whatever energy they can get. They go out and they play, and they're like a 5 of 6 or 6 of 10. And that happens with the goalies, too. The goalies aren't that good to begin with. And so you're scoring from outside the dots, like back of the circle, wrist shots or tight angle shots that never should go in. You're getting a lot of that cheap offense. And Bemstrom was good enough to gobble all of that up. This year, he's snapping them in front of the dot, in between the dots. And you know what he told me? My dad had a good talk with his dad. He's like, my people had a good talk with his dad and his people over the summer. And they were like, between the dots, kid. Get between. So for the millions of dollars of coaching that he has experienced, for the dozen player development people from Columbus to Pittsburgh that he's interacted with, dad saying, between the dots, kid. I don't know if he said kid. But in my mind, I envision Red Foreman. Between the dots, dumbass. That's just what I envision. But I am excited, or excited is not the right word. I am anxious, eager to see if Bemstrom can translate what he's done to the NHL level. He had a great game. And I mean a genuinely great game against New York. The following night, Ponomarev was his center, and the line was just garbage against Philadelphia. Take it for what it's worth, right? He played beside Kevin Hayes and Tomasino. Great line. Played beside Tomasino and Ponomarev. Terrible line. JR, any word on Erik Karlsson getting traded at the deadline this year? Well, we're all keeping it secret from you, JR. See, what we do is we wait till you log off. I can actually see everybody's IP address, and I can see yours day or night. I've got all the spy software already loaded onto your computer. And I wait until you log off. And then I tell everybody else exactly who called about Erik Karlsson and what they offered. And then I swear the entire internet to secrecy. And then you log on, we're like, oh, like roaches run from the light. We're like, oh, I didn't see anything. I kid. No, there's no word. I assure you that logic dictates there have been some conversations. Logic also says this is probably lost. Dave and Shelley are texting me, and I can see it on the screen, but I can't respond. Logic dictates that the summer is a much better moment for that trade, those talks. They're still chasing the playoffs now. They, in their mind, that's where they're at. Do I have any favorite prospect in the 6 to 12 range for this upcoming draft? Not yet, Jay. I think we're still sorting out who number one is. Matthew Schaefer has passed Tom Hagen's kid. Have you met him? He works at the Vatican now. Has passed James Hagen's, and I think we're still shuffling. Plus, in a draft like 2025, let me answer these people. Just people asking me for help on retweet. I swear to God, this network, I am so much happier when I'm just writing about the Penguins and doing this stuff. People just annoy the tar out of me. What should I do? If there were $1 million on the line, would you figure it out? Yes, then figure it out. But a draft like 2025, you're going to have significant variations in the 6 to 12 picks. I would wager right now that the draftniks who lay out picks 6 to 12 might get 2 right. Just that's the way this has been going the last few years without a really deep class. Some people are drafting on big potential. Some people are drafting on accomplishment. And it really is just all over the map. First, and a prospect for Mintkov. You guys are digging into the weeds here. So Pavel Mintkov from Anaheim. He's kind of doing pretty well in the OHL, isn't he? Off the top of my head, I can't think of which team he plays for in the OHL. Overpay. Huge overpay. First and a prospect. Whew. How old is Mintkov? Let me tell Dave and Shelley they just do whatever they want. Okay. Let me see how old Mintkov is. Lucky I knew that prospect name, quite frankly. That's one of the guys I looked into for Anaheim. He's 21. In fact, I should share the screen and just I'm using elite prospects right now. So here's what I'm looking at. Let's jump over there. Let's share the screen. Pavel Mintkov, so you all can see what I'm seeing. Yeah, one goal, no assist in his last 5 games, 2 points in his last 10 games. Woof! That's no bueno. Why are they showing me mayonnaise advertisements? That's kind of weird. Okay, so 10th overall pick in 2022. Zero chance that they would trade him this quickly then. You're not getting a 2022 pick unless you're giving up a 2023 pick or something along those lines. Anaheim is still in building mode. First and a prospect. So you're going to go heavy for a guy who has 2 points in his last 10. I'm going to say no on that Josh Steele. I'm just going to flat out say no. Connors, regarding our conversation about having the defenseman jump into the play more like Carolina, says, no, I want to see the defense pinch less. you can't have a strategy of pinching more or less. The game really should dictate how that's going. When there's an opportunity, when you have the puck deep and you have the defense, 5 defenders kind of drifting down below the dots, then you can pinch. Or if you have the forward already F3 coming up high, you can do those sorts of things and you're much better for it. At that point, you do have 4 sticks. 4 sticks in the play. I get so irritated sometimes. But yeah, the play dictates that, and I suppose the forwards and what you have to work with and the forwards crew dictates as much as anything else too. All right, here's Flux. Now I'm gonna dissect this a little bit because I was there at that game in Hershey. I was sitting beside the Anaheim director of player development. But everybody got so excited. Oh my God, Anaheim has two players or two people there scouting the game. Listen, it wasn't just Anaheim. There were like 18 scouts there. And it's not because everybody wanted to see Pittsburgh or everybody wanted to see Hershey, because there was no other hockey. There was no other hockey that night. There were 5 or 6 AHL games scattered across the country. So just to get a look and a book on some of these people, team said, yeah, just go to Hershey. Also, Hershey's an awesome place to go if you're a scout because they feed you. Great press box. They've got some candy. It's a perfect place to go. You can hop out of Hershey to Philadelphia and catch a plane, down to DC and catch a plane. It really, everyone needs to kind of dial back the excitement over all of the scouts in Hershey. Yes. So I was in fact sitting beside the director of scouting or player personnel that night. Do we see a 2C from Anaheim come in to get Malkin on the wing next season? McTavish or Zegras? Now we're talking, Flux. Now you're in my wheelhouse. So you're in my ballpark. If you're going to start throwing that first round pick around, Mason McTavish becomes a player that you can splash it on. Although, truth be told, I don't know that he's worth a mid-first round pick, which is even better for the Penguins. Because at that point, maybe you trade a good prospect for him. Maybe you do a second rounder and a prospect, or maybe Anaheim is sick and tired of rebuilding and wants to take a step, and you offer a veteran that helps them. Penguins have a couple of those in the cupboard. So Mason McTavish is definitely a guy who I feel like is starting to figure things out a little bit. He's playing a little bit better hockey. He was noticeable when we were in Anaheim. I definitely made a couple of side notes about Mason McTavish. Because he's going to be an RFA, if he wants too much money, if Anaheim feels like he's going to command an overpay, that's when the trade talks start. And the Penguins had better be prepared at that point to kind of pay the premium, because that's the only reason or the only way that they're going to get him. All right. Jen Anderson says, I saw a reporter say, I guess you mean Sully's system holds Erik Karlsson back from greatness. I thought of you and chuckled at that system comment. Any thoughts? So you're asking me to criticize a colleague, and I don't know which one I'm about to tee up like a Titleist, huh? Is that what you're telling me? You want me just to blunt? And then you're gonna go over, oh, hey, Kingerski said you're a bleeping moron. So let's... the full situation is very simple on Erik Karlsson. He has the freedom to play the game as he sees fit. He has the freedom. The coaches want to see a lot more of this Team Sweden Erik Karlsson. they've said it publicly. They've told him, like, okay, here's the thing. Erik Karlsson has to feel comfortable doing these things, because somebody else was kind of railing on me a little bit about that. And I'm like, listen, they don't have reins on Erik Karlsson, but they do have responsibilities on him. He can't be jumping into the rush 4 wide without somebody to protect him. The thing with Sweden is they're such a responsible team. He's had a Mikael Granlund or a Nylander behind him to take care of any mistakes that might happen. And people are kind of poking at William Nylander there. Like, oh, well, what's wrong? Not Nylander, Karlsson, sorry. Why aren't you scoring more? I'm thinking because he's taking care of Erik Karlsson, because Karlsson is leading the rush and the charge, and people are taking care of him. So there's always a push and pull. But no, Mike Sullivan, people who always say Mike Sullivan's system so rarely understand Mike Sullivan's system. All right, let's go to Connor Haberland. Higher odds for an asteroid to hit than for us to make the playoffs, according to Money Puck. That's scary. I wonder if Franklin or Wellsboro is a high enough elevation that I can go buy some property up there and build myself a bunker for the coming apocalypse. I know you had your hands full covering the top dogs in Wilkes-Barre, but did I get any read on Atlee Calvert? Good question. Yes, I got a read on him. Calvert is in the middle. He's what do I want to say? Not standing out. Now, Hayes is the guy there that I was really kind of let me double check something here real quick. Where is he? Because I forever kind of butcher him. Yeah. Avery Hayes is the guy I think that I'm watching who could make that leap from AHL player to the NHL. Atlee Calvert didn't leap off the page at me. I didn't see a whole lot from him. I saw him, didn't see a whole lot from him. So jump over to Avery Hayes. Matt Helmer says these next 4 games are critical to win. I'd suppose so. We thought the 4 games before the break, and the Penguins kind of, got 3 or 4 points, lost. Yeah, the Penguins have no shortage of effort over the last couple of weeks. They've had a couple clunkers. Every team does. It's truly a matter of deep talent and putting it all together, and they're just not that good with what they are right now. They're not better than their competition. They could easily win the next 4 games, and they might be 4 points out of a playoff spot with, other teams having a game in hand, which, there's just too many teams. It's as much as I want them to make a run at this playoff spot, because it's better for me, it's more fun to watch, it's better for them, more fun for them. The odds really are just astronomical. Brian asks, who is the most disliked Penguin by other fans around the league all time? Ulf Samuelsson or Matt Cook? I'm going to go ahead and say Ulf. Ulf was villainized in all cities. I think people didn't like Matt Cook later in his career when he went headhunting. When it was still legal, by the way. Kind of legal. So I don't I never had the sense that Matt Cook was reviled. Ulf was reviled. Like, fans would make a point to boo Ulf. Can Harrison Brunick play in the AHL playoffs this season? Why, yes. Yes, he can. And I would expect him to at least be with the team in the playoffs. As I recall, I think I wrote a couple of weeks ago that his WHL team is kind of in the tank. So pending, and I could be wrong, take it with a slight grain of salt, pending him getting traded to a playoff team, I do think you'll see him, at least in the AHL, at least wearing a suit around the boys. The Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins have a pretty good defense. So finding a spot for him would mean taking out I don't know who their third pairing right side defenseman is. You've got Mac Hollowell, Jack St. Ivany, and I'm not sure who the rotating guys on the third pair are. So perhaps it might be one of those development things, development over winning, or, development over a rookie. Over a veteran. But yes, he will be around. Did anyone ask Spezza about how some of the players treated Pickering? Won't lie, kind of disappointed to hear some vets did that on a Crosby-led team. Steve, I'm going to answer that myself. No, because no one asked because I'm the only one who knows about it. Well, I'm the only reporter who knows about it. And I talked to a few people around the room, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Owen can be a little bit of a goofy guy, having some fun, and maybe some vets were putting him in line, kind of cracking him a little bit to, straighten up or grow up or whatever it might be. But there was nothing over the pale, nothing that raised anybody's eyebrows. It was, I suppose we'll call it a minor story, which is why I didn't print anything beyond what I did on the PHN Plus. So let's just let's call it a day on that story. If he comes back and I get wind of more of it, then we'll talk, right? JR likes my joke, or at least I hope so. DM Zebo. My God, is that English? Think Raquel sat out the... I think Raquel sat out the Swedish game because he's hurt or a possible trade. I think he was sick at the end of the tournament. But Zabo, what are you on, like an old flip phone having to hit like 9 numbers to type? Come on, man. Type out the words here. I'm surprised I haven't heard more James Hagen's consigliere jokes. That's good. Yeah. I try. All right, JR is back. He says lots of speculation about Marner possibly coming to the Pens in the offseason. No, just me. I wrote it last summer. I wrote it a couple weeks ago. Like, it's still out there. It seems highly unlikely, 5%. I think 5% is probably high. It's more like a 1%. But maybe possibly likely if offered 13 over 7 years. Here's what... the only path by which Mitch Marner to the Penguins makes sense, and I wrote this as part of, the possibility, is if the Penguins make several trades between now and July 1st, they feel like they have hit the upswing. Like, okay, we can't make any more changes to what we've got. Now comes the upswing. Now we have to start accelerating and start building quickly. Now we have to start adding players around these guys and reconstructing the core. It's unlikely. We're talking that 1% to 5% range, but that's how a Mitch Marner would make sense to the Penguins. Whereas if they see a path to competitiveness within 1 to 3 years. So that's going to be a lot of work between now and let's call it the draft is what, like June 28th or something. A lot of work, a lot of trades. It would have to be a lot of turnover where the Penguins can where the rocks have been already turned over. Yeah, I think the recent heater Avery Hayes has been on. He's been like, 13 points in 12 games or something. It can't hurt his stock. We'll see. I think we will see after the season if the Penguins re-sign him to an NHL contract. That's going to be the ultimate determiner. Me salty? Never. All right, Matthew, to find out what happened with nothing really happened with Pickering. There was some talk that some veterans were giving him the rookie treatment when he was, playing with Pittsburgh. You have to read, for the rest, you have to read PittsburghHockeyNow.com. Go to PHN Plus, and there's this, it was in the bigger part of, it was a tiny 2-paragraph part of a 1,500-word story on Owen Pickering, Ponomarev, and some other prospects. Any chance we see Murashov get a chance in the NHL this season? No. Murashov is going to ride out in Wheeling for the rest of the season, unless there's an injury. That came from Jason Spezza today. He's going to play most of his games in Wheeling, barring an injury. Gable Fisk has enough time elapsed now that the full story of what happened between Gino and Craig Adams can be told? Probably, but I don't know it. So I'm the wrong guy to ask on that. Yeah, I've never heard the story of Craig Adams and wait, that was Malkin the guy that Craig Adams was just pounding away on practice, kept hitting him in practice, back in like 2010, and they finally just told Craig Adams to go away. Is that what was happening? I remember Craig Adams was really rough in practice and really treating the stars, the kids aggressively. But beyond some of that, I have no idea. Who's my choice, Rantanen or Marner? I would choose Mitch Marner for the potential to play center as well. Let's see here. And watching WBS games, I kind of liked what I saw of Gruden before he got hurt. Should he and Poulin get one last look as NHL fourth liners? Root hog or die time for them. John Gruden, no. But by the way, how do I no, Gruden is hurt in Wilkes-Barre, by the way. I suspect it's not a day-to-day injury. Poulin, yes. I'd like to see Sam Poulin get one more crack at the NHL. Unfortunately, in his previous couple of cracks, his chances, he hasn't done anything with them. I think it's been purely on him, why he isn't here and why he didn't stick and all those sorts of things. Sonny, I actually haven't had a chance to speak with Tristan Jarry. I can't say where his head is. He was called up to Pittsburgh, don't forget, at the Four Nations break, and they sent Joel Blomqvist down. So when I was there, it was Joel Blomqvist who was the goalie. Do I think they should try to trade Jarry in some sort of pick? Yes. I think that would alleviate the logjam of goaltending that the Penguins have. I think clearly the relationship between Jarry and the Penguins is over. You never know. Sometimes necessity forces the two sides to, come back together for a while. But barring absolute need, I don't see Jarry and the Penguins as long-term partners there. Yes. So to that point, you're going to have to eat 50% of his contract and maybe toss in a draft pick. I was wondering if Vancouver might nibble, because it seems like Thatcher Demko can't stay healthy right now. He's out again week to week. And I was wondering if the Penguins could find a way to make that work. I don't know. That's pretty heavy stuff. Robes 08 says Crosby is a creature of habit. In the Four Nations, he asked Marner to be the last one on the ice, a la Malkin. Could we possibly see Marner in a Penguins uniform next year if they shed more contracts? I didn't realize. I haven't watched the games or the pregame closely enough to know that he asked Marner to be the last guy on the ice. That is so Sid. That is fantastic. I think McQueen is actually a lottery pick, Cal Reed. I've seen him around that 5 to 8 mark. Gable Fisk is back. McKinnon to the Penguins. Absolutely. Free him from the tyranny of Gabriel Landeskog's inability to admit reality. Not serious, but a funny troll. Sure. Listen, if people can keep bringing up Sidney Crosby to Colorado, why can't we bring up McKinnon to Pittsburgh? While we're at it, hey, Brad Marchand is going to be a free agent this summer. They could have the entire Nova Scotia Mafia. Don't forget, Ryan Graves is in that mix too, so you'd have 4 Nova Scotia Halifax kids, Cole Harbor kids in the lineup. Why not, right? Was I surprised by the value of Drew O'Connor's contract? A little bit, only because he's had such a rough year. But $2.5 million with a $96 million salary cap next year? I suppose $2.5 million is the new $1.5 million. Good for Drew, by the way. Lars says, would Crosby play hurt to try to get the Penguins to the playoffs at risk of sacrificing the 20 consecutive seasons with a point per game? The record would mean nothing to Sidney Crosby. 0 zip, nada. If he can get the Penguins to the playoffs, he'd have duct tape on his wrist or his elbow or his arm, whatever it is. He would be out there with paper clips, bubble gum, chicken wire, duct tape to get the Penguins into the playoffs if he could. Personal glory be damned. Don't worry about Crosby ever thinking individually like that. Michael, here we go. That hit the other night by Sid. Oh, you mean separating Mikael Granlund from the puck, catching a fluttering loose puck, and then kind of poking it into the empty net. Makes me think the arm injury is either way better, or did that just make it worse? I don't think that was shoulder. There was, I suppose we're all guessing a little bit. I can guess less than you can, because if I say something, you think I'm telling you a report or inside facts, and the reality is I know nothing about Sidney Crosby and injury. I know nothing more than anybody else. Let's see here. Even being an old player, I think Marchand is the type of player the Pens could really use. I don't know. Where would you put him? Other than Sidney Crosby's wing, which right now is still occupied by Ricard Raquel and Mikael Granlund, where would you put Brad Marchand? Marchand is also having trouble this season. Trouble playing at the level he's accustomed to. Jim Montgomery was benching him early in the season. All of those sorts of things. You get to 37, 38, and God starts taking things away. Just no question about it. The Four Nations is generating such excitement among the players, says Mr. Nash. Can the Pens build on that through Sid and Sully to recruit free agents? Or are the Penguins just too far from contending to lure free agents? that's how do I want to answer this? They're too far away from contending as we sit here today. Now, having said that, in a year or two, let's just say Brady Kachuk comes available. Would he mind coming to Pittsburgh? Probably not. So let's just say playing for Mike Sullivan and the things I've heard guys say has done the Penguins no harm. Certainly hasn't hurt. But our guys, players don't line up like that to go play for a coach like maybe they used to. Let's see here. The fact that a 37-year-old is out playing McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon shows that Crosby is still the best player in the game, just had a bad team around him. I said this to somebody today in the locker room. I think this tournament has shown the difference between what an all-time great is and what a great player is. And I mean that to highlight the contrast the difference in Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby. A great player can do great things, but an all-time great makes the difference. The difference. Whatever is needed in that game. And Sidney Crosby has done that time and again in the first 3 games. So you've seen the difference between an all-time great and a great player. Just presence and leadership and all of those things. Oh, Jennifer's going to get me in trouble. When Biz quotes me saying Marchand to the Pens this summer, please don't say that, Paul. No, Biz. No, Biz. No, Biz. I'd love to see Brady Kachuk in a Pens uniform so badly. He's been my favorite player to watch in this tournament. Hard to disagree, B. Schaaf. Hard to disagree. The Kachuk brothers, man, it's kind of funny to me because they are playing quintessential, hard-nosed 1970s Canadian hockey. They are playing exactly the way that Canada decided they had to play to beat the Soviets in 1972. Many of you may have heard the Summit series in 72. It was like a 9-game series, and the espionage and the political intrigue surrounding it are just extraordinary. But essentially, it was Russia's emergence upon the world stage trying to take hockey supremacy away from Canada. You don't take hockey away from Canada. Basically, it was a national holiday for 9 days, 9 games. People took off work. It was kind of on television, but mostly sitting there by the radio in 1972. Kids coming home from school with, little handheld radios on the bus, have it cranked up. If you ask a Canadian where they were when Paul, his name just, Paul Henderson. Henderson scores! Henderson scores! Any Canadian over 6 years old will know exactly where they were when Paul Henderson scored to beat the Russians. And basically, that tournament was about Canada schooling Russia in the dark arts, the physical hockey. In fact, one of the iconic moments of that tournament, this is kind of coming full scale with the Kachucks here. One of the iconic moments is Bobby Clarke, him, as a prime member of the Broad Street Bullies in 74 and 75, later general manager who built some really rock-solid, very competitive teams in Philadelphia. The guy who was banging on Ron Hextall's door back in 2018, was it, to draft Cale Makar instead of Nolan Patrick. I guess Bobby Clarke was right on that one. And so Bobby Clarke, Canadians are trailing, about to lose the series, actually. Was it game 7, game 6? I'm not fluent on the Summit Series, but I sat in the Hockey Hall of Fame one day, and they were running the documentary on it. And I was watching men weep watching the documentary. It's that big in Canada. So what Bobby Clarke does is he comes up behind Valery Karlamov, best player in the world at that point, and just breaks his ankle. No joke. Two-hander right to the ankle, breaks his ankle, takes him out of the game. And in the documentary that NBC did about 10 years ago, 7, 8, 10 years ago, Bobby Clarke, they asked him, like, geez, that was kind of dirty. And Bobby Clarke's response was, we really wanted to win. So that was the Saskatchewan two-hander. That sort of emotional engagement, to be kind, that physicality, that do whatever it takes, beat them up, intimidate them, send a message. The Kachucks are bringing that to USA Hockey, which for quite a while has had a terrible reputation as a bunch of SUV riding mama's boys getting the best of everything because mom and dad have mortgaged the house so they can play travel hockey. Selfish, arrogant, lazy players is the rap on Americans, or has been for quite a while. Now the Kachucks come along, and they are bringing that old school Canadian to American hockey. I'm down for it. How's that for a rant, huh? You got history, you got all kinds of context stuffed into that answer. Let's see here. It's been an hour. Has it been an hour? Yeah, I guess 57 minutes. It's been an hour and no mention of he who shall not be named. It's a beautiful thing. Let's do it. Let me look up Hockey DB. Hang on. I can't believe it's been an hour. I've been flying along, haven't I? Oh, okay. If I could type. Let's see. Any points? 2 games, 2 assists for thine who shall not be named. I was quite frankly tired of taking the slings and the arrows and the anger and all of that stuff. I mean, all I did was explain the challenges for him to get in the lineup and dare to agree that Mike Sullivan didn't shaft him. All right. That is going to be just about it for me. I'll repeat the call at the top of the show. If you're out there, if you want to sponsor No Pucks Given and these Penguins live chats that we do weekly, I think I saw about 70 live people at a time. That usually translates to about 500 total viewers. By tomorrow morning, we'll be close to 1,000. By tomorrow afternoon, we'll be over 1,000. So it's not bad. None of you made any trade proposals. That was the whole point. You're supposed to make some trade proposals. Oh, I told you we'd get into Vasily Ponomarev. I was not kind in my analysis of Vasily because of the 2 penalties he took last Tuesday and last Saturday. I'm going to guess a lot of you didn't read me on PHN Plus. Shame on you for 6 weeks. Basically, he took 2 game misconduct penalties with, kind of dirty plays. And Jason Spezza said, well, I'd rather him learn where the line is down there than up here. But Spezza also said he compared Ponomarev to Sam Poulin and said he expected them to be challenging for NHL ice for the rest of the regular season. So take that for what you will, that maybe Poulin is gaining or that Ponomarev is slipping, that they'd like to get both of them in the lineup, probably. I could very easily see Matt Nieto, if not being scratched. If they want to make room for some kids, Nieto's roster spot would be the first place to start. And that's nothing against Nieto. He's going to be a free agent. He's probably proven everything he can with the Penguins. And you start with his roster spot for the kids. And actually, you'd be surprised at who I would think would be in second place. Kind of one of the younger mid-20s guys, but I'm not going to go there yet because then you'd keep me here for another hour if I told you. Okay, let's Trump with that. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I only flashed that comment on the screen. If you're not watching it, you didn't see it. And that is it for me. 1 hour. All right, kids, have fun. We will talk soon. Like, share, subscribe, and sponsor. Wee.